Hi, darlings. I decided to do an impromptu tough times, tough cookies to spread some lockdown love. I think that I'm just in that mood. I'm in that type of mood. So I thought, why not? Oh, dear. Okay. So just a few things to sort of start. Tough times, tough cookies, for anyone who doesn't know, is sort of like what I started doing ages ago when we had the first lockdown, when I was still actually staying in Amsterdam. And it was usually timed events. This is not timed. This is like just completely spontaneous. I'm just here on a Saturday, not doing anything much, and decided, you know what, I have some things to say. I have some love to spread. I want to talk to people about what is going on and where they are with lockdown and everything. Hi, Isabel. Hi, Megan. So I decided to do a little sort of a little impromptu one. Wanda is here. Hi, darling. Wanda's in quarantine, solitary quarantine for 2 weeks in Korea. Oh, darling, bless you. How is that going for you? So baby cakes, basically, tough times, tough cookies. It's usually timed events. We were doing them, I think, every month for a while. I think we've done 6 or 7 of them. I then sort of trailed off with them. And that was mostly because I was focusing on my client calls and wanting to spend my spare time in slightly different ways, focusing on my Patreon, focusing on the Discord, etc., that's connected to my Patreon. So I haven't had the opportunity to think about when I might like to schedule tough times, tough cookies. So I'm just doing an impromptu one right now. So the purpose of this live is just to spread love, to talk about lockdown, to talk about what is going on with the pandemic, our responses to it, how we are doing and stuff like that. I'm going to have a cup of tea. I'm not going to be here for ages. I might be here for an hour. I might be here for less. We'll see how we go. But I want it to be a similar kind of vibe to the Tough Times, Tough Cookies events that we were doing. So that's what I am up to here. And I'm going to be reading comments. For anybody who's watching this on YouTube, it is not live. So just for the record, if you are seeing this on YouTube, it is not live. I will not be able to see your comments. This is a Facebook Live. And I actually do Facebook Lives fairly regularly. Please do follow my Facebook page if you are not following my Facebook page and you would like to see more of this kind of thing. So I do post my other thoughts and stuff like that, and memes that I think are inspiring. And occasionally I just come on here live and we have some chats. So yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, you are watching the playback, which I'm sure I will upload to YouTube so that other people can get the benefit of this, especially since a lot of people do not use Facebook at the moment, or go on there only really sporadically. But I would like you to have the benefit of the discussion and you know, just really sort of like lean into some lockdown love if that is what you are needing. Okay, let's have a look at some comments. Hi, Heather. Hi, David. Wanda says, trying to flirt away my loneliness. Well, darling, you know, sometimes that is the ticket. I must say, as a single woman living alone on lockdown, sometimes that's just the thing. Oh, dear. Hi, Patricia. Patricia says, good morning, Cherry Pie. Good morning right back to you, darling. Stephen says, hi, Kelly. How are you? I'm holding up. Thank you for asking. Yeah, you know, could be worse, could be better. And that's something I want to talk about as well. Is I want to talk today about the honesty that is involved with talking about how we are, how things are going for us. I want to talk about toxic gratitude. I want to talk about doing what you can and not comparing. I want to talk about a few different things. I've got some notes. So I'm going to go through and hopefully provide you guys with some food for thought, maybe some things, some thoughts and ideas that could be empowering, inspiring, strengthening for you during this time. And let's all just get into how we are feeling as well. You know, I want to hold some space for you guys as well. I don't just want to talk at you. For anybody who is a Pop-Tart over on my Patreon and watches my Patreon live streams there, you will know that I recently did a big talk about shadow work, and I had meant to include a lot of time for holding space for everyone to talk about their shadows, but I had so much technique that I wanted to impart, and I was giving sneak peeks from the book and all kinds of things, and I just ended up blah for an hour. So now we've decided to do another one where I hold space for people. So sometimes it can get so, I can get so heavy with the ideas and so excited that I sort of like don't have any time to hold space, but I want to hold space. So there will definitely be time for me to ask how you guys are doing as well. But first of all, just for the benefit of people watching on playback or coming here really looking for just some sort of nurturing during this tough time, And I know it's different for everybody in different parts of the world, believe me. I want to impart some ideas. I want to sort of like just give some love and hopefully give some strengthening vibes, you know, because I know that it's just a really weird and very difficult and uncertain time for a lot of people right now. Just for the benefit of you understanding where I'm coming from, guys, I'm on hard lockdown again here in the UK, and we have 3 different tiers at the moment. Correct me if I'm wrong, UK people, but I think we have 3 different tiers. Last I checked, and where I am in the country, I'm on tier 3, so that is the most extreme tier at the moment, where the fewest things are open and we have sort of access to the least non-essential things. The road outside my flat is very, very quiet at night, which I will say is one benefit of being on tier 3. But it is certainly difficult for me. I think this hard lockdown is much more difficult for me than the last one was, for various reasons. So, you know, I'm certainly finding that I'm having to reach for my tools quite a lot more. I'm certainly finding that certain things that were previously working for me in terms of elevating my mood and making me feel better and more optimistic are not necessarily doing the trick anymore. You know, so certainly I'm going through some difficulties, you know, in relation to dealing with this lockdown. Okay, I'm just having a look at some comments. Oh, Stephen says, Kelly, you make my day. Thank you, darling. I really appreciate that. That's so lovely. Thank you to everybody saying good morning. Isabel says, it depends if you're in Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, or in Wales in terms of tiers. Right, yeah, so in England, I guess I should say England. I should qualify that rather than saying the UK. I've been trying to keep up to date with what's going on in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, actually. But I also find, and this is one thing that I will say, and I'd love to know if any of you guys are the same, I also do find that it is really healthy for me not to be on the ball with everything that's going on. And I know we talked about that in previous episodes of Tough Times, Tough Cookies. We talked about the exposure to the news, exposure to information. How much do we want to have access to information? You know, how much is healthy, basically. Hi, Heather. So lovely to see you here, darling. David says, your bubbly nature and enthusiasm is very uplifting and infectious. Thank you. Oh, you're so welcome, darling. I appreciate that. Trent says, glad to have caught alive. Hope everyone is hanging in there. I hope everyone's hanging in there too. It is such a weird time, and I think we can all afford to decide for ourselves what is the best amount of access to what is going on minute by minute that is good for us. And for me, I've definitely had to tone down how much I'm paying attention to the news. Even the word tears bothers me now. Yeah, I don't care if I never hear the word tears, as in T-I-E-R-S, for as long as I live. Unless we're talking about a fucking multi-layered wedding cake, I don't need to talk about tears. Thank you very much. It's driving me crazy. So yeah, I'm really fed up. Sophia says, yeah, I tuned out 3/4 of the way into Prime Minister's questions earlier this week as it was just winding me up. Oh my God, Sophia, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I also watched Prime Minister's questions, and I half zoned out and half cut off angrily. It was really challenging for me to watch, and there was some information on there that I wanted, and I certainly think, you know, some sort of challenging questions and points of view were posed that I think needed to be, but I honestly was growling at certain points. I was so infuriated. Certain things were shut down way too quickly without adequate answers being provided, of course. But anyway, yeah, I found that I did zone out, but I also kind of like had these moments where I was thinking, I'm not doing this. I can't do this. This is just not healthy, you know? Aidan says, hello Kellyanne, I watched your live yesterday with Becca and I loved it so much. Thank you. I definitely need to publicise that. I need to let everybody know on my community page on YouTube and stuff that I did that with Becca, because it's well worth watching. Let me actually write that down so I can do that after I finish here. Yeah, I had a chat, darlings, with Becca from Becca Tarot Talks, or Becca Talks Tarot. Why can't I remember which way round it is? But anyway, many of you will know who Becca is. Bit of a bastion in the card slinging community now, and we had a chat about sexuality and sexual identity and self-acceptance, and it was just an amazing chat. I really loved it, so thank you so much, Aidan, for catching that. Tonk says, it just keeps getting weirder here in the US. I try to avoid it some, but my husband is keeping track, so I really don't have a choice to know. It's just so frustrating and mind-numbing here. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tonks. And I think also it's really important that we recognise whether we are regularly talking with somebody, whether we live with somebody and we're around them a lot, that it is okay for us to say, I get that you're having the amount of involvement in information that you need to have, but I need to make sure we're only having one conversation about it a week, or I need to make sure that I feel that you've got the support elsewhere that you might need, because I find that too many conversations about this tends to make me feel like I can cope with it less. And I think it's perfectly acceptable to say that to someone, you know what I mean? I think sometimes you're going to find that there are certain people that just want a lot of conversation about this. They might want a lot of reassurance about this. They might just want to relay certain pieces of information to you. And actually, if you feel in your body, and you really can feel it in your body, I think, when it's become too much, it's no longer helpful, I think it's okay then to say, hey, you know, I find that for me, this is not helpful to talk about to this degree. And it's not about judging what somebody else needs to do in terms of the information they want to take on or how much they want to talk about it. I have no judgment on that. Most of the time, I feel like people are just different. And it's not a case of me looking at somebody who wants to watch the news every day about this and thinking, oh, wow, that's really unhealthy, they should stop. Because it's up to them. And the amount of information that they want could be something that is very reassuring for them, that gives them a sense of power, that makes them feel like they are dealing with it in a way that's healthy and helpful. But I think I still reserve the right to say, you know what, I'm really toning down on the news right now. I'm really not into it at the moment. I'm finding it's not helpful to me. And I think because we're going on day by day, just figuring out what are the tools, you know, what is the recipe for success in this day, just like the power that I have and the strength that I have, the well-being that I feel just on this day. And if that doesn't include ingesting any news, I'm perfectly happy to say, you know what, that's a bit too rich for my blood. And I think if you're really close to somebody as well, you can have sort of like a code. I was watching a really great video from Lena Norms. I love Lena Norms, Just Kiss My Frog. She has an amazing channel where she talks about books and feminism and politics and well-being. She's incredible. And she was doing a video with her partner where she was talking about how they have a code that means fuck off out of my face, basically. I can't handle it, because they live in a small flat together. They're obviously on hard lockdown together. They both work from home. They're both freelancers. And so they just are stuck together with nowhere to go. And of course they do love each other dearly. They obviously have a very happy relationship, but they were finding that they needed to give each other permission to say, can you get out of my face? I just need to be alone. And they had to have a really frank chat about that with each other and just be like, hey, you know what? It's okay. It's okay that you do not want to hear from me all the time. It's okay that you do not necessarily want to process every thought in my head, and you're not obligated to. Let's start to get comfortable with just saying to each other, can I have some space? And so they came up with sort of like a funny little code that is related to a stand-up comic that they like. And they were just like, okay, when I say that, it means, and I'm done. And I love that. Kelly says Lena Norms is amazing. Oh my God, Lena is my wife. I absolutely adore her. I've been watching her for years and I thought that was really lovely. In fact, she's made a lot of really good lockdown content. And I think that she might be part of the reason that I am doing this as well, that I felt like quite called to come back into the Tough Times, Tough Cookies vibe for a while, because I think what she's offering is just really nurturing and lovely. It really is. She even did a video not that long ago about her clothes, about getting dressed up every single day, even though she's got nowhere to go. And I really relate to that. You know, I've always done that anyway, even when I didn't have any plans before the big C, the big Corona, the big Rona. Even before that, you know, I'm somebody that is very into getting dressed up. And I often am a person who gets dressed up when they're ill, because I find it makes me feel better, at least if I'm unwell, which I very, very rarely am ever unwell these days, which is fortunate. I do have chronic pain though. And I do tend to find that dressing up in a lovely party frock or an evening gown or whatever that I would normally wear to a wedding or something, if I get dressed up and I put on a full face of makeup, then even though I'm creaky and I can't sit on my bum because my L4 is screaming, I feel better. I feel better. So if I'm snotty, if I just feel crappy and hungover, if I've got chronic pain, I tend to find that, you know, putting on a fabulous set of earrings such as these or whatever, it just does make me feel a bit brighter and better. So it's a really good tool for me. And she recently did a video about that. She did a video about getting dressed up every day for lockdown, and just feeling like, why should my clothes waste away in the wardrobe all year? I have lovely clothes. Why don't I just get dressed up for myself? And I thought that was a really lovely video. So yeah, Lena does a lot of really good content. Stephanie says, my sleep schedule is really an absolute mess right now, but if I'm up late enough to see Kellyanne, it's worth it. Oh, thank you, darling. Stephanie, what time is it where you are? Out of interest. Is this going to be painful for me to know? Heather says, I have to have a knowledge of what's going on in all 4 UK countries due to my job, but otherwise I try to limit how much info I ingest. It just gets too much otherwise. Yeah, I think that's a really, really fair thing as well. When you have to be on the ball for your job, then you really have to think carefully about, okay, what is my biting point with information outside of that? You know, so I think it's really good that you're asking yourself that question and really doing what feels right for you. And remember, guys, as I said, it is okay to say, you know, I'm done, I'm at capacity, I'm saturated, I'm information saturated. And if somebody else chooses to take that personally, that's on them. You know, really, we have to be allowed to say when something is not healthy. We have to be allowed, you know. Hi, Regina. It's lovely to see you, darling. Regina says, you look fabulous. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Stephanie says, an unholy 4:50 in the morning, regrettably. Oh, Stephanie, bless you, darling. Well, I'm glad you're happy to be here, but if you've got any sleepy tea or any CBD oil, or just can listen to pink noise or a nice little sleep meditation, any of those things might help your situation, darling, depending on what you feel is appropriate and what you enjoy. Stacey says, we just got out of hard lockdown in Victoria, Australia. Hadn't left the house since March this year. Stacey, I'm so glad. Did I say Stephanie just then, or Stacey? I think I said Stacey. Stacey, I'm really glad that you're out of hard lockdown, darling, and I'm glad that you good things come to those who wait. I'm glad that you're in that situation now. 3:50 for Tonks. It's 3:50 in the morning for Tonks. Guys, thank you for spending your wee hours with me. I really appreciate it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about doing what you can and communicating what you can. I think both of those things are really important right now. Sorry about my camera constantly refocusing, darlings. I'm really not sure how to deal with that at the moment. But yeah, I wanted to talk about doing what you can. For me, one thing that's been a real struggle is not having access to the gym has been really difficult for me. And I have been going backwards and forwards with shaming myself sometimes for not working out and for feeling like some of my physical conditioning is kind of going. That is tough for me. I really feel like I've lost a lot of momentum, and I'm putting that out there because I want people to know that, you know, I'm feeling this in case they're feeling this. And, you know, just give people the opportunity to sort of feel into any shaming that they might be doing with themselves regarding things like working out. Also, if you were on a really good track with your eating, or you were on a really good track with your reading, or whatever it is, and you feel like lockdown has messed with that and you have lost some of your capacity to stay the course and you've lost some of your momentum, we have to identify when we are shaming ourselves. And I think we have to put a microscope over that and say, is it at all surprising that things have gone a little bit off course? No, not really. Everything is topsy-turvy and upside down and weird right now. So I think it's really important that we cut ourselves some slack. We have to really identify where there might be some shaming going on, where we're talking to ourselves in a really cruel and unnecessary way. And just say to ourselves, yeah, of course, there's going to be times where things feel stagnant and I don't have the momentum, and that's okay. So I'm calling you, I suppose, to sort of check in with where you are shaming yourself. For me, it's definitely been in relation to movement. It's definitely been in relation to workouts. It's definitely been in relation to my physical conditioning and the journey that I've been on with that. And it's been about feeling a sense of loss, the loss of the gym, which is really sort of the reason I pay for the gym, the reason that I make that investment is because it really has always helped me with my motivation and my focus. If I work out at home, it's not the same for me. And I know for a lot of people it's fine and that's great, but for me, I find that having access to the gym has really allowed me to just stay the course. It takes me out of my home environment, and don't forget I work from home. So it can be the case that I just do way too much at home. I'm at home a lot of the time. And so the gym used to be this way for me to get away from home, change up the scenery, and then go to a place where it's all just machines and free weights and aircon. And so I really felt like, this is where I go to just get into the body and feel embodied. This is where I go to make sure that I'm focusing on my goals and I'm not being distracted by things that are in my home or things that are in any other environment. At the gym, it's like, I'm here to train the body. I'm here to connect with my body. I'm here to enjoy physical movement. So for me, that's been a really hard loss. And there's definitely been some shaming around finding that it's much harder for me to work out from home. It's much harder for me to get into the headspace to do that at the moment, obviously, because of what is going on and how I'm processing it every day. It is just much more difficult to connect with my sense of consistency. And I have definitely had times where I've shamed myself about that, both in my mind and also in conversations that I've had with people where I've been like, oh, well, I've been completely useless this week. I haven't worked out once. I haven't moved around. I'm such a potato right now, blah, 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 you know. And I forgive myself and I understand myself when I'm doing that shaming. I forgive myself for doing it. I understand why that's happening and why that's coming from a point of frustration for me. It's really just a point of frustration that I'm finding that I cannot access my ordinary routine, and it hurts, you know. So I understand, and I'm not going to shame myself for shaming myself. So that's another thing that's really important. But ultimately, I think it's about recognizing, okay, that's not helpful. And also, it's completely understandable that consistency isn't where it should be. It's completely understandable that I don't always feel in the mood to do these things for myself. It's completely understandable because there has been such a rip in the fabric of normalcy, and I need to allow that. I need to be all right with that, you know? So I think that's an important thing, and I wanted to mention that. Rachel says, I'm definitely feeling the physical decline and how that's affecting me emotionally. It's hard, definitely. And I think that's where a lot of people are. I so relate to that, Rachel. I really get you. It's so difficult, and you know, I think especially for people who know that there are these really deep and important reasons why they are trying to always be embodied, and they're trying to always feel into their physicality, and they're trying to experience that sense of movement in a way that is healthy, and also sometimes in a way that's a healthy challenge. So for me, as a lot of you know, and I know I've spoken about it before on the channel and in blog posts and stuff for a long time. I don't blog anymore, by the way, but when I did, I definitely wrote about this. I do experience chronic pain. I do have a back injury. It's always been something that I've had to negotiate and navigate ever since my early 20s. It happened in my late teens, but it really started to depreciate and give me problems in my early 20s. And because of that, there is obviously this extra reason why I really do need to keep strong, especially my core. I need to do as much as I can in that area when I can. The other reason that exercise is so important for me, physical movement is so important for me, is my mental health. I just acknowledge, of course, that there is, and it's scientifically proven. It's not something that I'm just chatting on about that I see for myself personally. It's something that we know that release of endorphins that comes from exercise certainly can have a really positive effect for people with depression especially, which is undoubtedly what I suffer with, guys, and have done since I was about 10 years old. So yeah, there's another reason why I do it, and I think that's part of the shaming as well that I've been going through, and I want to be really honest about the fact that it is something I've been going through and experiencing. I'm not immune to these things. Just because I'm a mental health advocate and a self-love advocate and a spiritual counsellor does not mean I'm in any way immune from any of these things. I do experience moments where I'm like, oh, I shamed myself there, and I just try to course correct as much as possible. I course correct, and I lovingly course correct. I don't say, oh, don't shame yourself. Like, I don't get angry with myself. I understand why. It's coming from a place of frustration. It's coming from a place of feeling that I'm losing some of that momentum. It's coming from a place of seeing that it is hard on me. As Rachel said, it's like you see that happening, you feel it happening, and it is tough. It's hard on the mental health. So I try to lovingly course correct whilst also understanding why I might have that tone with myself sometimes, and being very forgiving of myself for it, you know. Alexis says, oh my God, loving course correction. Love that. Yeah, exactly. That's all it is. It's just recognizing, okay, I've gone a little bit off track there, and there's always the opportunity to get on the right track again. There's always an opportunity to say, I don't really enjoy it down this road. Let me just veer off. Let me rejoin the road I'm supposed to be on and that I've chosen for myself. And it's okay. That's fine, you know. I'm just looking at some comments, darlings. Kelly says, I have that same feeling with trying to study and write my thesis to finish my bachelor's this year. Normally I do most of my studying at the library or at cafes, but obviously that's not an option now, and I'm having such a hard time focusing at home. I get so distracted by other things. I'm really worried that this means that I won't make it this year. Kelly, I relate to this so much. This is such a thing for me, where I've also had to lovingly remind myself, you're doing what you can, and it is no wonder that you cannot work to full capacity. It's no wonder that you don't have all of your engines firing. That is actually not unusual or weird or shameful or even out of the ordinary. That's what everyone's going through. A few things I would say. First of all, I do know a few people who during this sort of last academic year found at the end that they didn't make it through in one way or another because of the things that were happening, the difficulties that were going on. Results that came through were not satisfactory, not up to par, not what was expected, not what was predicted. And I know that it's scary, and I know that it changes plans, and I know that it's not ideal, but it's also something that is completely understandable and would never be the worst thing that could happen. So I think we do need to hang on to that, and we do need to recognise and witness that there are very understandable reasons why that may be the case. Another thing that I want to say is, if you're a kind of all or nothing sort of person, like I am, I can sometimes be this way, where I'm like, I'll either do the whole 5,000 words I wanted to write, or I'll do absolutely nothing. It's got to be one or the other. I won't be satisfied with anything less. Or even just the feeling of like, if I've started late, there's no point in starting at all, because I said I was going to start at this time, so I really have fucked it up now, so I may as well just carry on fucking it up. Notice when you're doing that, and remember that any little thing is worthwhile and you can praise yourself for. It's all about doing what you can. Also, try to recreate as much as possible what does happen in a cafe. For me, I find it really, really useful to go onto a site like Coffeetivity. And on Coffeetivity, you can literally just listen to coffee shop noise. So they have like library coffee shop noise, they have like bustling town centre coffee shop noises, and it includes the sounds of the machines going and the sounds of people taking orders, the clinking of spoons and saucers. I don't think people actually recognise how that has been proven from studies to have a very calming effect that allows you to focus. It's almost like ASMR. Coffee shop noise is a very specific kind of animal. And yeah, if you sort of have that connection with that noise, then make some coffee and put coffeetivity.com on and actually listen to that. Listen to the sound of the noise. Put it in and just be like, yeah, okay, I'm in the cafe. And try and bring it to life through the noise, because that can definitely have an effect. I also like to do a lot of things in cafes. I like to hit up my email in cafes way more than I like to do it at home. Sometimes I really find it very hard to focus on email, and I do struggle with communication anxiety. It's something that probably not a lot of you will know about me, but it's true. I do struggle with communication anxiety sometimes, and I used to find that going to a cafe, just saying, okay, I'm allocating 2 hours to email, I'm going to do it in a cafe, it would really help me to bish bash bosh through it. Now I don't have that. That's hard. So I lovingly forgive, I lovingly understand, I'll take what I can get. If I can only do 5 emails when there's 50, at least I've done 5. You know, I'm not going to be horrible to myself about it. These are unprecedented times, and I have to take what I can get. And also listening to coffee shop noise is really helpful, and just imagining that I'm in that mode, you know. And I'm also a big alarm setter. I'm somebody that's like, okay, for the next hour, I'm visualizing that I'm in a cafe. I'm not going to look at my phone till it goes off. I'm not going to look at anything else until it goes off, aside from what I'm doing. So if you're hitting the books, that might be a really useful thing, is just to be like, okay, I'm just imagining I'm in a cafe. I've got the coffee shop noise on, and I'm just going to go for it. Looking at some more comments, darlings. Tonks just relating and saying that that also they find that they are better at studying away from home and working away from home. There's a lot of empathy for you, Kelly. There's a lot of people that feel this way, darling, for sure. Trent says, I'm actually an agoraphobic, so my lifestyle hasn't changed in any way, but my close friends seem to be leaning on me in a way that I'm not used to. Oh, darling, I think that's something that I have heard before from people, especially people who are very introverted, people that have social anxiety. As you mentioned that you are agoraphobic. You know, sometimes it's, I think it's people coming to this recognition that they are struggling, and they feel like you might have the toolkit. But don't forget, you can only do what you can, you know. Please don't feel like you have to be somebody's counsellor, or, You know, that's beyond you, I should imagine. That's something that you don't feel you want to take on, perhaps. But it can be amazing to see that you have certain tools that can help somebody get through a time that is unprecedented and that they don't have much experience with. But yeah, we have to be really careful when we are somebody that other people are leaning on, don't we? We have to know that we are only doing what we can do, and that it goes back to exactly what I'm talking about here, is doing what you can do, communicating what you can, basically, and not forcing yourself to do more than that. Okay, so do what you can, communicate what you can. You know, if you can only reply to one message, or you can only reply to, you know, just very briefly to a message, if you find people are trying to make contact but you feel like you need to move away, then if you can do that, do it. Or if you need to message somebody and say, sorry, I can't communicate right now, can I get back to you in a few days, or I will get back to you in a few days, let yourself do that. Try to avoid the comparison that comes from recognizing that you can only do a certain amount. I think a lot of people come to a point in their head where they say to themselves, I can only do a certain amount. I need to cut back on this. I need to tone this down. This is too much energy that I'm spending here. And then immediately what kicks in is this recognition that somebody around them is doing more, or somebody around them doesn't seem to be affected by the pandemic. Somebody around them seems to be going full speed ahead. And then it's right back into the shame spiral. So I really want to urge you to connect with where you might be recognizing that you've got to do less, or you've got to communicate less, or you've got to be kinder to yourself. But then immediately you're looking at somebody to the left of you or the right of you, somebody online, somebody with a business, somebody in your life, and you're thinking, well, they're coping okay. They're doing actually more than they usually would do. They seem to be thriving. They don't seem to be bothered. They don't seem to be worried. Don't do that to yourself. You are allowed to have your own response to what is happening. And the other thing that I really want to say as well in relation to that is, don't let someone shame you. Avoid shaming others for anything that they're saying that they're struggling to deal with. And don't let anybody fucking shame you either for what you might be struggling to deal with. Everybody is dealing with this as they can, day by day. And I've found that there are some days where I feel actually very strong, very together, very capable, very vibrant even. But other days, and it's an increasing amount of days recently, I'm feeling bewildered, it's a struggle, I'm feeling very nostalgic, I'm missing a lot of things that I haven't had for a very long time, I'm feeling fearful and sad. So I think sometimes we can look at somebody who seems like they're being a real sort of like behemoth of strength and capability, and we can see them as someone who is constantly in that way of being, and we can be like, oh my God, the shame of not being able to be like that person. But look, that person might just be feeling that way right now. They might have their low moments, they might have their weak points, they might have their fears and their feelings of being incapable or being disempowered. And maybe you don't see that. Maybe they don't give you access to that so much. Maybe they seem to always be coming from a strong position when you speak to them or when you see them online, but actually they're going through their own stuff. So always as well, try not to assume, I think. You know, try not to assume that you know what someone is going through. Sophia says, so true, we need to show compassion for others. You never know what they're carrying, especially now. That's very powerful. You never know what they're carrying, especially now. Exactly. So I think avoid comparison. Don't let anybody compare what you're going through or how you're reacting with how somebody else is reacting. Put that boundary up. Avoid being shamed by people. You know, and I think if somebody says, oh, you can handle it, you're fine, you know, just do this or do what I do, or, well, your sister's handling it okay, or, well, you know, other people are getting on with it. Don't let people talk to you like that, please. Please do remind people that everybody's different, and that it doesn't help when you admit where something is a pain point for you and you are treated as though it's not valid, it's not legitimate. Some people need to be reminded as well that when they reach out and they're going through a pain point or they need help, they are met with that support and they are met with that encouragement. So that's really what they should be trying to give in reciprocity when it's their turn, you know? So sometimes we have to just be like, hey, try not to shame me for what I'm going through. I'm trying to be honest with you about what is going on for me, and I would love it if you would do the same. And I think we should support each other where we are now, as opposed to idealizing where each other should be. You know, that's not helpful. That's not healthy. I want to talk about toxic gratitude now, babes, because I think obviously that's something that I've long been aware of and I've spoken about before in my work, but like, oh my good goddess, is it ever, you know, more extreme than it's been before in my lifetime? Is it ever? Toxic gratitude is cooking on fucking gas lately, isn't it just? It's coming from every angle. It's really, when I ingest it or when I do it to myself, I know that's poison from the jump. I can feel that and oh my God, I want to cough it up. It's awful. It's psycho-spiritual strychnine, darlings. Let's not do it to ourselves. It's the arsenic of the soul, isn't it? Alexis says, yes, the toxic gratitude is everywhere right now and it's making me feel horrific. Thank you for your honesty and for your empathy, Alexis, with me in this. I'm somebody that practices gratitude a lot, conscious gratitude as a spiritual practice. In fact, saying this, I am in reaching distance right now of my on and off again and off again gratitude journal. The reason that I haven't finished this one is because I often write my gratitudes in my actual journal. So I've got here my sort of mundane, everyday sort of journal. I've also got here my more spiritual journal, my book of mirrors, and this also has a lot of gratitude stuff in it. So I always try and make sure I'm writing down at least once a day something I'm grateful for. So I am not in any way coming from a perspective of trying to say, fuck gratitude, never mind that. I think it's really healthy for me. It's really healthy for me. But do I write down something I'm grateful for every day? No. No, I don't. Because I think sometimes it's really important to recognise that I'm not in that mood, and now more than ever, it's understandable why I wouldn't be. And I do not want to force myself to engage in something because I'm telling myself that if I don't, then I'm just spoiled. And if I don't, then I'm just, I've just lost perspective. Everybody is where they are and everything is relative. Let me repeat that actually. Everybody is where they are and everything is relative. I know that I have a roof over my head. I know that I have people in my life who love me. I know that these earrings are fire and I own them. And how lucky am I for that? You know, I know these things. I have these points of gratitude. I understand things could be a lot worse. I'm so grateful for what I have. Excuse me. I'm so grateful for that little hiccup burp thing that just needed to come up while I'm on a live call. This is the perils of lives. I'm grateful for all of that. That's amazing. But I have to acknowledge where my pain points are, where I am afraid, things that I miss, stuff that I feel I'm fucking losing. And that's okay. That's got to be all right. Why would we ever say there's not room for somebody to feel some pain or some fear or some uncertainty? Would you ever say that to somebody else? Would you ever look somebody in the face and say, you've got nothing to fucking cry about? There's no room here for your uncertainty and your pain. You can wind your neck right in with that. I'm sure you wouldn't. I know I wouldn't. You know, so sometimes I think it's really important if we know we would hold space for somebody else's difficulty and try not to bombard them with this idea that like, okay, great, you're feeling upset, but don't forget you can feel grateful for this, you can feel grateful for that, you should be happy about that. If you know that that's toxic for you to take on, for you to ask others to take on, don't take it on yourself. And I would try very hard to always understand that everybody is grappling with the burden of human consciousness. Everybody is grappling with the uncertainty and the fear of what comes after death. Everybody is grappling with the uncertainty and the fear relating to illness, relating to the impending sense of difficulty or doom. So I think it's always about finding that point where, yes, of course, there are things to be grateful for, but there's also a lot to be sad about and worried about right now. And I think both things can be true. It's a paradox that is absolutely evident everywhere right now. And anyone who's trying to get us to bypass that paradox in favour of just living on this happy-go-lucky, gratitude-oriented side of the line probably could do with a good cry themselves and a good little sort of like a little breakdown, a little meltdown. It's okay. It's okay. And maybe listening to this, you can think of at least one person who needs to be reminded that it is okay and that they are allowed. They don't have to remain in perpetual gratitude all the time. They don't need to keep pretending that they're comfortable and happy with everything, and that they're only focusing on what they have and how grateful they are for it. No, it's okay to feel fucked up about this. And that's something I've really been trying to give to myself. Alexis says we have to honour what we're feeling. Pushing it away is such a bad coping mechanism. And that, but you should be grateful attitude is exactly that. Yeah, it's refusing to hold space. And I think some people will insist on gratitude to the point where it becomes the pushing of toxic gratitude, right? I think some people will insist on that because they are kind of afraid of admitting and sitting with their own fear. You know, it's something that's freaking them out. And so it's very hard to hear where somebody else is coming from with fear and uncertainty if the person hearing is thinking, no, I'm trying to block it out for myself. I have fears, okay? I have fears, I have sadness, and I don't want to connect with it. So when I'm hearing you connecting with it, it's getting very scary for me. Sometimes we might be opening up to the wrong person. Sometimes we might be trying to have an audience with the wrong person about how things are affecting us because they're not ready. They're not in the right place to be able to do that. And that's okay, but step away from somebody who's trying to bombard you with toxic gratitude or is trying to shame you out of feeling your feelings. You know, don't keep trying to open up a conversation with them if they are really trying to force you into gratitude, or they're trying to make you feel shame for having feelings other than gratitude. Margaret says the difficulty is everyone is more or less feeling the same. Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I've kind of found that part of the difficulty is that people are feeling so different. Yeah, so, you know, and some people will be feeling very up sometimes, or very positive, whilst other people are really going through their low points. And I think sometimes that makes it harder to empathize. And I think for me, I'm seeing a lot of people who are in a certain mind frame, they're in a certain mindset, and they kind of want other people to be feeling the same way. And it's almost an inconvenience for somebody to see that somebody else is in a different mood one day, or somebody else might require support in a way that it seems inconvenient or seems scary. So I think there's, yeah, Margaret says it's both. Yeah, sure. I think a lot of people, I think it would be difficult for me at this point to say that I'm coming across a lot of people who aren't feeling, at the very least, uncertainty and low level fear, if not sadness, grief, fear, anger. During the first lockdown, I felt personally, I don't know how you guys feel, but I felt personally during that first phase where, you know, pretty much the whole world was locking down, I felt like there was much more of a marked difference in who was really going through it and who wasn't. There were a lot of people who were very much seeing the silver lining for themselves in the beginning, and I think that's a great thing. I think that's amazing. So many people were like, okay, if this is happening and it's all going to shit and everything is weird and different, at least I can take this opportunity to think about writing this book, or at least I can take this opportunity to really connect with people I haven't connected with, or at least I can, you know, whatever it might be. I'm going to declutter my space. And a lot of people like tapped into that energy of almost the novelty value and the momentum that can create, the immediate drive that can create. And I did speak to people, clients and audience members and friends who were like, you know what, I feel awful for what others are going through, and I feel, you know, my heart goes out to others, but I feel like I'm really kind of like taking this by the balls. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm not getting that energy as much anymore with this second wave for a lot of countries, and people going back into lockdown who had previously had the rules relaxed, which is what we're going through here in England. I think that now there is actually, yeah, as you said, Margaret, a lot of people feeling much more similarly, which can be both a good and a bad thing, because you've got less people to pick you up sometimes when you feel like you might want to be around somebody who's being very happy-go-lucky. But then at the same time, you know, you have the empathy there. Margaret says the longer it goes on, the more the shit gets realer. I now know 2 people who've died of it. I'm so sorry, Margaret. My condolences go out to you for that, darling. Yeah, shit is getting realer the longer it goes on, for sure. For sure. I think shit is getting realer with life loss. Shit is getting realer with the economy. Shit is getting realer with the frustration and the fear and the way people are behaving, for sure. Megan says, I'm going through both fear, worry, anxiety, like we're on the cliff edge, whilst also being happy on a day-to-day basis and feeling guilty for feeling that happiness, as I know things are shitty for a lot of people. Megan, you've really tapped into something that I've been feeling as well, that I kind of want to communicate, since this is a tough times, tough cookies, and we're just like communicating what we're going through and stuff. I am feeling what I would describe as somewhat of a sort of survivor's guilt. The feeling that I have managed to bypass a lot of things that others are really struggling with, especially in relation to financial stability. My business has not been all too affected. It's certainly been affected, but it's not been affected in any way that is going to cause a struggle for me. And that has made me feel a lot of guilt at times. I've definitely dealt with that. And I've definitely dealt with the fact that I'm limited in how much I can actually relieve the worries of so many people around me. And I'm also feeling the energy of other people's worry and other people's anxiety and stress and tension when I'm going out to get my groceries, when I'm going for my daily exercise. I can really feel it, you know, and I know a lot of people watching this are going to feel the same and have a similar experience. So I'm definitely feeling that survivor's guilt. I'm definitely feeling that sense that I'm not being touched by some things that are affecting others. Alexis also there empathizing, 100% survivor's guilt. Yes. Yeah, that's been something that's difficult for me to deal with. And I have just been trying to do what I can. And you know, part of that is taking food to the food bank, making sure I'm putting stuff in the little, because there's quite a few shops in my area where there are actually little food bins in there where you can put food in, that is collected daily by people that are doing outreach for low income families and people who've lost their jobs and stuff like that. So that's really important for me. And also doing things like this where I just hopefully create some kind of meaningful and useful space for people going through all kinds of things, and just recognizing that I want to be as tapped in as I can be to the fact that people are going through things in different ways and people are coping with different stuff. And that is really all that I can do. I cannot check, like, sort of, I don't know, what would I like to do? I'd like to be in a situation where I could almost sort of like divide my fortune into pieces and just like share it out on this ongoing basis, almost like giving people access to some of my good fortune, basically, like my luck, that I'm in a position where I'm not affected in those ways. And of course, like, these things are not necessarily possible. You can make sure that you are giving your excess where you can, but you cannot just give people a different life path. You know, the people that are struggling right now, and that is a reality. And so it's quite difficult also for me to kind of like accept that. I hate that. That's something that's really difficult for me. Tonk said, definitely feeling that. Thank you for giving it a name. Yeah, no worries. I'm something I've read about a few times, that survivor's guilt. It happens sometimes after there's been a disaster or a number of deaths and someone has survived and they just can't handle the fact that they lived and somebody else lost their life. And I feel like that's related right now to the way I feel about watching other people's lives kind of crumbling and people going through so much uncertainty, and knowing that so many people that I don't even know and will never meet are struggling to figure out how they're going to put food on the table. And believe me, the government here are not helping in that fucking department. So it's really difficult for me to know that that kind of thing is happening and that I am not experiencing that. I'm not experiencing that. I don't have children and I'm not in a food scarcity situation. So there again, there comes in this sort of attitude of gratitude that I can adopt. But I don't want to stop there either. I don't just want to be like, oh, how lucky for me, I'm all right, Jack. I want to think to myself, okay, well, if I'm okay, then I have some energy left over and maybe some money left over to do some things with. Let me think what I can do. And again, it's about doing what you can. It's not about looking at what somebody else is doing or what somebody else is contributing or the attitude that somebody else is holding and thinking, oh my God, I need to emulate that. Oh my God, I'm not as good as that person because I can't do that, or I can't provide that, or I can't manage to convince myself to feel that way. Don't do that to yourself. It's not helping anyone for you to be a tyrant upon yourself and to guilt yourself in that way, you know. Alexis says, you have no idea how much your content and you showing up like this creates space for me, and I'm sure other people, to feel what I feel and process it and sit with it in a non-judgmental space. Thank you. That is really what I'm trying to do. So thank you for confirming for me that is something that is at least useful, darling. Aidan says, one of the things I've had to really watch out for personally is not becoming a toxic healer. I loved your video on that. Thank you, Aidan. That's something that I think lots of people who have that ability to empathize, to hold space, and also to sense people's energy and people's emotional needs. And I know that's a lot of members of my audience, like a lot of people connect to my work because they empathize with me on that. That's something that people have had to really watch out for. And I think it's been a baptism of fire for a lot of natural healers and space holders and givers. And I think it's great. I think we can see the kernel of meaning in that. I think we can see how precious it is that we're having that opportunity to really like get right with ourselves on that point. I'm drinking some orange, rhubarb and ginger tea. And oh my goddess, it's lovely. Could probably do with a sugar, and I don't often say that about tea, baby cakes. But who knows, maybe it could. I don't know. I'm not going to get up and put any in, but maybe when I have another one later, I'll try it with a sugar. But it's lovely. Okay. Another thing I want to talk about is the fact that not everything is pandemic proof, and it doesn't need to be. I feel like there's a lot of firefighting going on for a lot of us right now, you know, psycho-spiritual and emotional firefighting, where we are trying to make sure that like all of the relationships will last through the pandemic and be the same in spite of the pandemic. All of our creative projects that we were going on with before the pandemic can be absolutely okay and can come out unscathed. You know, the sort of mission that we were on with our physical health, you know, our workouts, spiritual life, what we were doing with our witchhood, all of that has got to be completely pandemic proof, and we've got to come out the other side of this finding that we've lost absolutely no momentum, and if anything, the experience of the pandemic enriched it and strengthened it. That's not realistic. I think it's okay if not everything is pandemic proof. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about my relationship with working out and physical movement, and how I've really found that for various reasons I have not managed to sustain that momentum, and I feel like there has been a break in that particular journey, that mission that I was on, and the cohesive sort of steps one after the other that I was taking, and the discoveries I was making, and the journey, the progression that I was making. There has been a break in that. Yeah. There has. And I found it really hard to admit that at first. I was pushing for that pandemic proof vibe. I was like, no, this is not going to deter me. No, nothing's going to change. And actually that's not the case. And I think some of my relationships have not necessarily been fully pandemic proof either. Let's face it, we're not really behaving as the best version of ourselves during this time. And I've had to find a middle ground between shaming myself for not maybe dealing with things the way that I normally would, and taking responsibility. So I do not want to shame myself. I want to acknowledge that I've been going through a really difficult time. But at the same time, I want to take responsibility for putting things right where I can, and for recognizing what might have been the trigger that made me behave the way I normally wouldn't, or made me approach something in a way I normally wouldn't. And the same in return. I have definitely experienced some treatment at certain times that I think has partly been due to the pandemic, and due to the fact that some people are not behaving as the best version of themselves, and they're going through a lot of difficulties with their well-being and their mental health. I've tried to find the middle ground between persecuting them for that and judging them very harshly for that and being cruel to them in return. I don't want to go there, but I also don't want to go to the point where I'm making excuses consistently and I'm letting somebody treat me like that indefinitely. And, you know, I'm just basically sort of allowing them to put completely their accountability down and not take any accountability for the way they're behaving. So it's a middle ground. It's a harmony between one thing and the other. It's the empathy that you need to be able to recognize where somebody else might be working with less resources than usual, working with less of a sense of sanity and stability than usual, and being kind enough to know that and recognize that. That's really important. But yes, at the same time, it's also important to say, I have my limit, I have my boundary, you can't treat me like that ad nauseum. We're not going to keep going through this. You know, I'm sorry you're going through hard times. We're all going through hard times, but what's your fucking tone? Or I'll smash your lights out. No, sorry, ignore me. That's not what I meant. I would never talk to somebody like that. Yeah. So anyway, you know, there's that as well. Not everything is pandemic proof. Relationships, projects, plans. My birthday trip was not pandemic proof, sweetheart. I was supposed to be going to Zurich for 5 fucking days. Thank you very much. For my birthday. I was supposed to be going on a solo trip to Switzerland for my birthday, and I was going to go and visit Carl Jung's house, which is now the Carl Jung Museum. You get to walk around his house, and it's a museum, and you go on a tour, and like, I was thinking, do you know what? That would be perfect for me for my 36th birthday. I want to go on a solo trip. I want to walk around Zurich. It's going to be beautiful. And of course, months later, the flight was cancelled, but England went into lockdown again, blah, 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 blah. So my birthday trip was not pandemic proof. You know, a lot of different forms of momentum or planning weren't pandemic proof. My whole bloody summer social calendar was not pandemic proof. So why would I expect that some of my projects would be, or some of my feelings about people would be? We've all seen the shadow sides of each other a lot more, I think, and we've all seen as well how fragile things can be that we felt was sort of like holding us together or helping us to hold on. Tonk said we were supposed to go to Japan for my husband's 50th. Oh, I'm so sorry, darling. I know, I'm speaking to people that can't go to their parents' special anniversaries or birthdays. There's nothing happening. People that had like amazing foreign trips planned. Ugh. Lots of festivals people couldn't go to. RIP festival life. Of course, it calls forth that sense of creativity and that sense of like, okay, what can we do instead? Like for me, I'm going to be having a retreat here at home. I've decided on a few things I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing lots of meditation. I'm going to be doing lots of journaling. I'm going to also make a video, I hope, about like me having my self-loving birthday retreat and actually showing you what I'm doing, showing you like how I'm spending my time instead. So I've got a little bit of content planned out of it. So that's going to be exciting. So I'm just basically trying to see it like that, you know, trying to be creative, but also at the same time letting myself grieve. And going back to the shame that we feel for the things that we're feeling. When I found out that my flight was cancelled, it was my assistant was going through my email, and my assistant's also one of my closest friends in the whole wide world. And he messaged me, he sent me a voice message, and he said, darling, I'm so sorry, but, you know, the trip has been cancelled. And by that point we suspected that we were definitely going to be going through another lockdown and definitely going to be going through a second wave anyway. So I already had like my strong feeling that things are not going the way they need to go. The numbers are not going the way they need to go. You know, just looking at what was going on in other countries, I knew it was probably a no-go. But when the flight was cancelled, it sort of made it real. And I was really sad because I've had a really hard year. I was having a hard year before lockdown. I'm happy to say it. I'm comfortable to say that despite all the ways in which I'm lucky, I rolled into January in a complete shitstorm. And that was before anybody knew what COVID-19 was. So it was just one thing on top of another, to be honest. And I worked pretty much the whole way through it. You know, my work is such a point of joy for me. And, you know, gave me that sense of stability. But certainly I had to have a couple of times where I was like, okay, I need a few days off because I really am going through it, right? So when the flight was cancelled, it just made it very real. And I knew the trip would be cancelled. That's why I hadn't booked a hotel and stuff yet, because I kind of like had this feeling, of course. So, you know, it wasn't pandemic proof. And I felt ashamed of crying. I cried straight away. As soon as that message came through, I sat down on the floor and I just cried, because I was like, you know what, like I really wanted to do that for myself, and I visualized it, and I knew it was gonna, in my mind and in my heart, it was gonna make up for so much of the other shit that I had been through. Not even most of it related to COVID, but other things. A relationship breakdown that I'd experienced, a really tough time that I had experienced emotionally, changes going on in my life, in my sort of, lots of things, guys, lots of things. And some real points there where I was teetering on the brink with things. And I pulled myself back, but like, it was a lot of effort. It was a lot of emotional strain on me. And I had Zurich, I had my eye on Zurich. It was like this North Star where I was thinking, okay, but at the end of the year, that's going to be amazing. That's going to be your gift to yourself. So yeah, I grieved. Yes, I did grieve. Not everything is pandemic proof. We do not need to force ourselves to make things pandemic proof. And I think we can be very honest with ourselves about where certain things have gone in a dodgy direction and taken a little bit of a weird turn because of COVID, because of what is happening. And I think especially with people's behaviour towards each other, tensions that might be building up, misunderstandings that people might be happening, distance that people may be taking, I think that, like I said, it's not about shaming people for it and persecuting them, nor is it about letting them completely off the hook and not forcing them, not expecting them to take any accountability. But it is about understanding. I think COVID explains a lot of things. It doesn't justify them, but it explains them. And sometimes I think that can be enough to just take a load off of yourself, take the pressure off of others, and say, you know what, this is a bit of a weird time. So yes, weird things are happening. People are not responding the way perhaps they ought to be. They might be disappointing us. They might be taking their leave of us for various reasons. But I think we can put COVID into the mix as part of the explanation for things. And I think if we've lost momentum in a way that's making us feel shame or making us take a lot of that responsibility onto ourselves and being like, oh my God, like I was with working out, where I was like, oh, I was really like getting into physical movement. I was embodied every day. I was really, okay, well, then there was a break in it. What do you expect? It's a weird time. Don't shame yourself. And I really sort of had to look at myself in the mirror and be like, darling, of course things are weird. It's fine. You can make it up at another point when things aren't weird. Don't shame yourself. Why would you do that to yourself, Hi, Marcia. Me too, baby. I was just emerging from the worst year of my entire life when we went into lockdown. I think that's why I've not struggled as much as others with the pandemic too, as nothing could be worse than last year. Oh, bless you, darling. I kind of feel that as well. I feel you on that. 2019 was a really weird, tough year for me as well. It was the start of what came to a head at the beginning of 2020, like the second half of 2019. I'd love to talk to you about that at some point and get into that. I know that we had a plan to meet before all this shit show went down, and I still want to. Hang in there for me, baby. But yeah, I think that is a reason as well that for the first lockdown, at least, I was kind of I was sort of riding a high, because I was already going through such a baptism of incredibly painful fire. That yeah, it was almost like, well, look, things were already a complete shit show, so I guess this is just another spoonful. Add another scoop to the bowl of shit show that I'm already eating. I'm already chowing down, so you might as well just put more on there. Just put some shit sauce on the top, would you? So yeah, I get you on that completely. Kelly says, I'm so glad to make a live. 2019 was rough for me too, but I grew so much. Marcia says, yes, my love, I'm here for you. I'm here for you, sweet cheeks. Thank you. I'm here for you too, darling. Sophia says, I left a toxic relationship just over 1.5 years ago. I had processed the trauma, and by February I was ready to get back on the horse and move on with my life. Then the first lockdown happened and I relapsed into my depression. I've not had that moment after a breakup where you go, screw this and have a party and focus on being your best self. Oh my goddess, Sophia, that is exactly a massive part of what I went through as well. Seriously, I relate to that so fucking much. Yeah, I didn't get that feeling of like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna put my glad rags on and go dancing. I did get that a tiny bit, actually, I'm lying to you, but I wasn't in a space where I could super enjoy it. It did prove to me that there was life beyond this incredibly painful breakup and this incredibly weird time I'd had in this relationship. But I wasn't ready yet. I was still very raw. And what I wanted was, my vision was like, okay, I'm still very raw. There's still lots of processing. But come July, festival season, I'm going to smash it. I'm single for the first time in 9 years. It's all going to be about me and my relationship with myself. I'm going to really like start to give more in. I'm going to take my overgiver and I'm going to turn her inwards, and I'm going to overgive to me. And yeah, there was a lot of visions that I had for that healing process that, like yourself, were kind of robbed from me. Yeah, I feel that. I hear that. I feel that. Oh, baby. Oh, Sophia, darling, yes, I basically get you. Let's put it that way. Let's not put too fine a point on it. Trent says it's also been a big clean-up time with election and the virus. So much I was able to let go of this year without second guessing what is serving me anymore. I love that. And I love those things. I love those moments too, where we can talk about what we did manage to do, what we are managing to process and let go of. That is so important. Let's not deprive ourselves of that. As long as we're not taking it into a space of toxic gratitude, as long as we are allowing ourselves to feel our feelings, you know, then I think it's amazing to recognize, yeah, I did get the opportunity to really work on that. I did get the opportunity to really let that go. And that has been good for me. And I think a lot of people are feeling guilt about acknowledging what has been good for them as well. Let's not forget. I was talking earlier about survivor's guilt and about that feeling that if you're not dealing with a certain issue related to the pandemic that other people are dealing with, you feel bad. But I think also people are feeling bad for just talking about their wins. People are feeling very bad for talking about the stuff that they have been developing or they have been working on. And so let's create regular space as well for ourselves and each other to celebrate our wins. We need that now more than ever. Let's not be ashamed. Let's not try and downplay. Of course, there's an appropriate time and an appropriate place, naturally. We don't want to interrupt somebody talking about their difficulty to say, oh, things are great for me. I just started a new project. I just finished a novel. I just, you know, cut off a toxic relationship. We don't want to be doing that. We want to make sure that we are finding the appropriate time. But here right now, during this live, is an appropriate time. Celebrate your wins. Celebrate the ways in which you've managed to make this work for you. And you have knuckled down, or you have done some healing, or you have had that tough conversation with yourself. I think that's righteous. I think that's righteous, and I think that's right on. I think we can afford to do that for sure. Okay, darlings, I'm going to go because I've kept you for far too long as it is. I really, really appreciate your time today, just talking about this, sharing your experiences. It means such a lot to me. I think the tough times, tough cookies thing where we just check in is really important. I'm sorry that I didn't schedule an event for it, but I just really felt spontaneously as though this is the right time. Now is the time for me to have this discussion and check in with everyone. So thank you so much for being here. If you're watching on playback, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I am open for business, darlings, as usual. I am offering mentoring sessions. If you want to do some spiritual counselling with me, if you want to do some card slinger chat, you want some mentoring with the cards, if you want some business mentoring, if you want to kick your business into touch or birth a business that you've been thinking about, especially if it's related to my kind of field, I'm offering all of that. I also do journaling sessions, art journaling sessions or writing journaling sessions, where if you are struggling to actually factor journaling into your reality right now, you can do it with me. I will get my art journal out here. You can get your art journal out wherever you are, and we can do it together. So I do offer that as well. So please do visit my online store. Have a look at what I am doing. It's kelly-annmaddox.com. You can also join me over on Patreon. We have a Discord over there. We have one card riffs where we explore a different card every month. There's lots of different things going on, lots of sweet treats going on over on Patreon. And as usual, I will just be uploading as regularly as I feel in my soul to YouTube. And yeah, doing my thing there. Don't forget, you can also pre-order my book Rebel Witch, and you can watch my announcement video over on YouTube if you have not seen me rocking up in my Babylon Zoo Spaceman May Queen outfit to talk about my book and the birth of my book. You can go over there and watch that now. In the works, there is actually a video coming up, a Tea and Tarot episode coming up, all about dealing with fear of judgment. So I think you guys will really enjoy that. So that's coming up soon. I've also filmed an amazing interview with Shamanic Ararat Priestess, which is incredible. So you're going to really enjoy that, I'm sure. And I also have a chat coming up on my YouTube channel with my best friend, Danny, where he goes through and interprets tarot cards from his layman's perspective. And it's very funny and cute, so I'm very much looking forward to giving that as well. And there is a treasure hunt video coming, darlings, for those of you who are always looking for new people to follow on YouTube. The treasure hunt video is coming. Okay, darlings, thank you so much for being present with me. Lots of people saying they can't wait for the book. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, darlings. Thank you, Stacey. I'm really excited as well, so I can't wait for that to launch. I can't wait for us to talk about it. Yeah, so I really appreciate this time. and have a really good rest of the weekend. You can catch me here on Facebook if you're watching this on Facebook, and I'm everywhere on social media. I tweet a little bit. I'm always on Instagram. If you want a little bit of a glance into where I'm walking, what I'm eating, what I'm making artistically and stuff like that, Instagram is a good place also to catch me and get to know me a bit more. Okay, much love, darlings. Mwah. Blessed be.